The world fell silent as the broadcast began. Millions of eyes were glued to screens across the United Kingdom and beyond, yet nobody could have anticipated the weight of the words about to be spoken. It was not just another speech, not a ceremonial address carefully scripted to soothe the public. This was different. The voice that emerged from the golden backdrop of Buckingham Palace carried an unusual gravity, a vulnerability rarely glimpsed in a monarch whose life had been defined by duty, ceremony, and an unwavering public image. King Charles III, a figure often seen as composed and unflappable, was about to reveal something that would send tremors through the very foundations of the monarchy. For decades, the royal family had been shrouded in a veneer of timeless stability. Each public appearance, each speech, was meticulously orchestrated to maintain the image of continuity and composure. Yet behind closed doors, there had always been the human element. The fear, the sickness, the private struggles shielded from the world. Today, that shield was cracking. Today, the king was not addressing the public as a ruler detached from personal vulnerability. He was speaking as a man confronting the limits of his own mortality, and as a custodian of a legacy now in transition. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The words late-stage cancer were never intended to dominate a morning news cycle, to become the centerpiece of global headlines. And yet, they did. The king's confession was more than a medical revelation. It was a seismic rupture in the carefully maintained trust between the monarchy and the people it served. For generations, the royal family had cultivated an image of strength, continuity, and invulnerability. The revelation that a monarch's terminal illness had been concealed, strategically, deliberately, was an accusation that the institution itself had placed its stability above transparency. The implications were staggering. How long had the public been kept in the dark? How many advisors, courtiers, and family members had been complicit in a cover-up that prioritized appearances over honesty? The questions piled upon one another like an avalanche, and yet the answers were few and guarded, hidden behind the fortified walls of the palace. As the broadcast unfolded, the camera lingered on King Charles's face, capturing the subtle tremors in his hands, the slight catch in his voice, the weariness that only years of private suffering could produce. It was a sight both shocking and profoundly humanizing. For many viewers, the image of the king confronting his own vulnerability shattered preconceived notions of the monarchy as an untouchable institution. People had always seen kings and queens as symbols, figures larger than life, existing in gilded chambers beyond the reach of ordinary concerns. Today, King Charles reminded the world that a crown does not shield its wearer from the ravages of disease, nor from the fears that accompany the realization of one's mortality. Yet the broadcast was about more than the illness itself. With the revelation came a declaration that would reshape the future of the monarchy. The responsibility of safeguarding the institution's continuity was being handed to Princess Anne. The princess, known for her dedication, her formidable work ethic, and a public persona marked by both dignity and pragmatism, was suddenly thrust into the spotlight in a way few could have predicted. Her role, historically significant yet largely behind the scenes, was now elevated to a defining moment of succession management. For the public, it was an unexpected twist. For the family, it was a calculated move, balancing the need for stability with the pressing reality of a monarch facing an uncertain future. The decision was deliberate, strategic, and fraught with emotional weight. Outside the palace, the world reacted with a mixture of shock, sympathy, and disbelief. News outlets scrambled to report on every nuance, social media platforms buzzed with speculation, and political leaders watched closely, recognizing that the revelation carried consequences that extended far beyond ceremonial symbolism. It was not merely a story of personal health. It was a story about institutional transparency, familial loyalty, and the delicate balance between public expectation and private reality. In living rooms across the globe, viewers debated the ethics of concealment, questioned the timing of the disclosure, and wondered what it truly meant for the monarchy's future. Yet for all the media analysis and public chatter, the emotional core of the story remained deeply personal. King Charles, like any human, was confronting the profound fear that accompanies a terminal diagnosis. He He was reflecting on the legacy he would leave behind, the relationships strained or strengthened by the weight of his role, and the daunting responsibility of ensuring that the monarchy would endure beyond his own tenure. In that moment, the broadcast became not just a historical announcement, but a deeply human narrative, one that juxtaposed the grandeur of monarchy with the intimate reality of mortality. The weight of secrecy surrounding the illness also cast a long shadow. For years, courtiers had managed appearances, carefully orchestrating public engagements to mask any sign of declining health. Advisors, physicians, and family members had worked behind the scenes, creating a delicate choreography designed to maintain calm while controlling the flow of information. The palace's decision to conceal the truth, ostensibly to prevent instability or panic, now faced scrutiny in the harsh light of public opinion. Citizens and commentators alike questioned whether the preservation of royal image had come at the expense of honesty, whether the monarchy's protective instincts had crossed ethical boundaries, and whether trust, once fractured, could ever be fully restored. Amidst this storm, Princess Anne's ascension to the role of guardian of the monarchy's immediate future introduced its own complexities. Her reputation for meticulous attention to duty and unwavering commitment to service positioned her as a stabilizing figure, yet the task ahead was monumental. She would need to navigate not only the intricacies of palace politics, but also the expectations of a public suddenly awakened to the fragility of its sovereign. Every decision, every public statement, would be magnified, dissected, and debated. The weight of history, the gaze of the nation, and the silent judgment of a family accustomed to secrecy converged on her shoulders. For the public, this revelation forced a reckoning. People were confronted with the uncomfortable truth that even institutions built on centuries of tradition are not immune to human frailty. The monarchy, often perceived as a symbol of unwavering stability, was revealed to be vulnerable, fallible, and subject to the same uncertainties that govern every human life. The dichotomy between perception and reality sparked a mixture of empathy and outrage, curiosity and fear. Families across the country found themselves reflecting on their own experiences with illness, secrecy, and the delicate dance between public duty and private life. At the heart of the story was the question of trust. How much should the public expect to know about its leaders? What is the responsibility of those in power to balance transparency with discretion? And perhaps most pressing, how does a family navigate personal crisis while simultaneously carrying the weight of an institution that spans centuries and continents? These questions, unanswerable in a single broadcast, would dominate headlines, dinner table conversations, and political discourse for weeks, months, and perhaps years to come. Even as the broadcast concluded, leaving the public to digest the magnitude of the revelation, the palace faced a new challenge: managing the narrative, controlling speculation, and guiding Princess Anne through a period of unprecedented responsibility. The king's admission, raw and unfiltered, had cracked the carefully constructed facade, exposing vulnerabilities that had long been hidden from public view. The broadcast was no longer just a personal confession. It was a catalyst, a spark igniting debate, reflection, and speculation on every level, from the intimate corridors of the palace to the farthest reaches of the Commonwealth. The human element of this story could not be overstated. The king, confronting both his mortality and the implications of his illness for the monarchy, demonstrated a vulnerability that resonated on a deeply emotional level. The audience, regardless of nationality or allegiance, was confronted with a simple truth: leaders are human. They fear, they suffer, and they make choices, sometimes secretive, sometimes controversial, that ripple far beyond their immediate sphere. Princess Anne, standing ready to assume an elevated role in this unprecedented moment, represented both continuity and change, embodying the delicate balance between tradition and the unforeseen realities of life. The night of the historic broadcast had been meticulously planned, yet there was a tension in the air that no protocol could fully contain. Inside Buckingham Palace, advisors moved quietly, their footsteps muffled against the plush carpets, their eyes betraying the weight of the secret they had carried for so long. This was not a typical televised address. This was a reckoning. The world would watch, listen, and judge. Every word, every pause, Every breath would be dissected, and the monarchy knew it. Yet there was no turning back. The moment had arrived to reveal what had been hidden for too long: the king's late-stage cancer and the unprecedented transition of responsibility to Princess Anne. As the cameras began rolling, King Charles III appeared on screen with a composure that belied the storm of emotions swirling within. His posture was straight, yet there was a subtle weariness in the slight slump of his shoulders. His hands rested gently on the podium, fingers occasionally brushing the edge as if seeking some small anchor in the gravity of the moment. Viewers around the world immediately sensed that this was different from the countless addresses they had witnessed over the decades. The usual polish and ceremony were present, but beneath it was a vulnerability that made the speech unforgettable from the very first line. "My fellow citizens," he began, his voice calm but tinged with a solemn weight. "I address you tonight not only as your sovereign, but as a man who has faced a challenge no monarch should have to bear in silence." The words struck like thunder across the airwaves. For a fraction of a second, there was collective disbelief. Silence hung in living rooms and public squares alike, as millions processed what they were hearing. The king was not speaking about policy, national achievements, or ceremonial matters. He was speaking about life, mortality, and truth. The announcement of his advanced illness was the first seismic shock, but it was immediately compounded by the revelation that the royal family had deliberately concealed the diagnosis. "For reasons I believe to be in the interest of stability," he continued, "my condition has been kept from public knowledge. I made this decision with the counsel of those closest to me, believing it to be in service of our nation and the institution we hold dear." The phrasing, careful yet revealing, laid bare a tension between duty and personal transparency. The public had long admired the monarchy for its steadfastness, but now questions emerged about where the line between protective discretion and deception truly lay. Across social media, news platforms, and informal gatherings, reactions erupted instantaneously. The palace's carefully curated image of composure and continuity seemed suddenly fragile, vulnerable to the scrutiny of a world that prized transparency and accountability. Political analysts debated the ethics of concealment. Historians contextualized the moment within centuries of royal precedent, and ordinary citizens grappled with the profound intimacy of hearing a monarch confront illness in such a public forum. The broadcast was a revelation not just of medical facts, but of human fragility in its most exposed form. Yet the broadcast was not merely a confession of illness. It was a masterclass in emotional navigation. The king skillfully balanced honesty with reassurance, vulnerability with authority. He acknowledged the personal struggle of facing a terminal diagnosis, but he also underscored the enduring nature of the monarchy. "While my health challenges me in ways I could not have anticipated, I have complete confidence in the resilience of our royal family and in the ability of those who serve our nation to ensure continuity and stability," he said. In this sentence, the transition of responsibility was delicately foreshadowed. Princess Anne's role was implied, not yet fully detailed, creating a tension that held viewers in suspense. The audience could see the layers of emotion etched into every line of the king's delivery. There was pride, yes, in the legacy he had nurtured, but also fear. Fear of leaving a fragile institution vulnerable, fear of how the revelation of secrecy would be received, and fear of the personal consequences of his decision to finally speak openly. It was a rare glimpse into the private emotional calculus of a monarch, a perspective that had been carefully shielded from the public for decades. Historians watching the broadcast immediately recognized the magnitude of the moment. Rarely had a sovereign addressed the nation in such raw, intimate terms. There were echoes of other historic addresses, times of war, times of national crisis. But never had a monarch confessed to a personal terminal illness while simultaneously signaling a shift in the line of operational responsibility within the family. The speech was both unprecedented and profoundly human, a combination that would ensure its place in history books for generations. Meanwhile, inside the palace, the atmosphere had been electric in the hours leading up to the broadcast. Advisors debated every nuance of language, every inflection, every possible misinterpretation. Security personnel moved silently through corridors, aware that the weight of global attention was concentrated within these walls. And Princess Anne, quietly observing, prepared herself for a responsibility she had long understood might come one day, but never so imminently. Her presence was understated yet commanding, a testament to her lifelong dedication to duty and service. While the world saw only the king speaking on screen, behind the scenes a delicate orchestration ensured that continuity would not falter. When the king finally turned the focus toward Princess Anne, the audience felt the significance of the moment. "I have full confidence in my daughter, Princess Anne, to uphold the responsibilities required in times of transition," he said. The phrasing was deliberate, emphasizing trust, capability, and the gravity of the role she would now assume. Viewers could sense the duality of pride and solemnity. This was both an affirmation of Anne's competence and a recognition of the extraordinary circumstances under which she would operate. Public reaction was immediate and varied. Traditionalists hailed the move as a wise and reassuring decision, emphasizing Anne's experience, discipline, and loyalty to duty. Critics questioned why the transition had not been made more transparent sooner, or why contingency planning had not been communicated publicly. Social media became a maelstrom of speculation, with hashtags trending in minutes, opinion pieces proliferating across news sites, and international media dissecting the speech frame by frame. Analysts pointed out that this was not just a moment of personal revelation, but a pivotal juncture in the monarchy's relationship with the public, a test of trust that would resonate far beyond the confines of the United Kingdom. The broadcast also highlighted the delicate balancing act of monarchy in the modern age. On one hand, the institution demanded tradition, discretion, and a measured presentation of authority. On the other, the public increasingly expected transparency, accountability, and authenticity. King Charles's address navigated this tension with remarkable poise. By acknowledging his illness and revealing the cover-up, he humanized the monarchy while simultaneously signaling continuity through Princess Anne. It was a complex message delivered with careful emotional calibration, ensuring that the monarchy's resilience was foreground even as the personal vulnerability of its sovereign was laid bare. As the broadcast concluded, the king offered a reflection that resonated deeply with viewers. "Though I face this challenge personally, I am comforted by the strength of my family, the loyalty of those who serve our nation, and the enduring spirit of the people we are privileged to lead," he said. It was a closing that acknowledged fear and mortality, but also reinforced hope, trust, and collective continuity. Millions were left grappling with the duality of grief and reassurance, an emotional complexity that would define public discourse for weeks to come. Historians, journalists, and ordinary citizens alike would later recall the broadcast as a defining moment in King Charles's reign. It was not simply the revelation of illness or the confession of secrecy that captured attention, but the human narrative intertwined with institutional duty. Viewers were offered a rare glimpse into the intersection of personal struggle and public responsibility, a moment that blurred the lines between sovereign and citizen, ruler and human being. For Princess Anne, the broadcast marked the beginning of an era of heightened responsibility. Her role, previously framed as supportive and largely ceremonial, was now thrust into the operational forefront. Advisors would look to her for guidance, the public would watch her every decision, and the family would rely on her judgment to maintain stability amidst unprecedented circumstances. The broadcast, while centered on King Charles's personal revelation, effectively set the stage for a reshaping of the monarchy's internal dynamics, an evolution that would reverberate for years. And yet, even amid the historical and institutional ramifications, the emotional gravity remained personal. People across the nation reflected on the vulnerability of their leaders, the inevitability of mortality, and the weight of secrets kept in the name of protection. The king's words prompted a collective introspection. How do we balance transparency with care, honesty with discretion, and duty with personal well-being? The broadcast was both an announcement and a mirror, reflecting universal questions back to a world suddenly confronted with the fragility of even its most seemingly untouchable figures. Inside the hallowed halls of Buckingham Palace, the air had always carried a certain weight, a mix of history, ceremony, and the quiet hum of service. But during the months leading up to the historic broadcast, that weight became almost unbearable. Every corridor seemed to whisper secrets. Every staff member moved with heightened alertness, and every decision carried consequences far beyond the ordinary scope of palace operations. For years, the royal household had maintained a careful equilibrium, balancing tradition, public expectation, and the private lives of the monarchy. Now, with the revelation of King Charles's advanced cancer looming, that equilibrium teetered dangerously close to collapse. The cover-up, as it would later be called in media reports, was not the product of a single decision or a moment of panic. It had been a calculated, multi-layered effort that involved doctors, private secretaries, senior advisors, and family members. The medical team was sworn to strict confidentiality, a pact that combined legal obligation with personal loyalty. Every appointment, test result, and consultation was meticulously documented in private records, shielded from even some of the closest aides. The king's illness was treated with the utmost discretion, medical updates conveyed only in the most controlled circumstances, and any hint of public knowledge was immediately contained. The logistics of maintaining secrecy were extraordinary. Staff schedules were altered to minimize exposure. Certain rooms were designated exclusively for the king's private consultations, and electronic communication was limited to secure channels. Even the most routine activities became exercises in precision. If the king was to receive treatment outside the palace, the route was carefully mapped to avoid public attention. Helicopters, motorcades, and discreet vehicle movements were orchestrated with military precision. At no point could anyone allow a photograph, a casual remark, or an accidental sighting to slip into the public domain, for the ramifications would be immediate and far-reaching. Behind closed doors, however, the tension was palpable. Advisors debated endlessly about the ethics of concealment versus disclosure. Some argued that the public had a right to know, insisting that a monarch's health was a matter of national concern. Others countered that revealing the diagnosis prematurely could destabilize the monarchy, create unnecessary panic, and embolden critics. The conversation was never just about transparency. It was about trust, legacy, and survival. Every argument carried the weight of history. Every decision felt like a precedent that could redefine the monarchy's relationship with the people. Princess Anne played a pivotal role in this internal calculus. Long respected for her pragmatism and unwavering dedication to duty, she was brought into discussions not only as a daughter, but as a future stabilizing force. Her insight into operational matters, public perception, and family dynamics proved invaluable. When senior aides debated the timing of potential announcements or the framing of internal communications, her voice carried both authority and empathy. She understood the balance that had to be struck, the need to protect her father, the responsibility to uphold the institution, and the moral question of public disclosure. Her presence was quiet but commanding, a stabilizing influence in a household brimming with tension. The king himself bore the burden of secrecy with a mixture of stoicism and private anguish. In moments away from public view, he confided in a few trusted aides, expressing both frustration and resolve. There were nights when sleep eluded him, haunted by the thought of how the revelation might impact his family, his legacy, and the public's faith. Yet even in these private moments, his concern extended beyond personal fear. He worried for the continuity of the monarchy, the morale of his staff, and the stability of a nation reliant on symbolic leadership. Each decision to conceal a detail, to defer a disclosure, was weighed against potential consequences that stretched far beyond his own life. Security protocols also intensified. The palace became an impenetrable fortress in ways the public could barely imagine. Surveillance was heightened, visitor access strictly controlled, and communications closely monitored. Even the most mundane interactions were carefully choreographed to prevent leaks. Staff members, already accustomed to discretion, found themselves navigating increasingly complex rules, balancing normal duties with the heightened scrutiny that secrecy demanded. Any lapse, however minor, carried potential international repercussions. Amid these logistical challenges, the emotional toll on staff was profound. Many had served the royal family for decades, developing personal bonds and a deep sense of loyalty. They understood the historical significance of what they were guarding, but they also grappled with the moral weight of hiding a truth that the public might arguably deserve to know. Private conversations in staff quarters were marked by tension, whispered debates about ethics, and expressions of personal anxiety. Some questioned the long-term sustainability of such a cover-up, worrying about the moment when the truth would inevitably surface. Others simply focused on the task at hand, trusting that their dedication and discretion were in service of the monarchy's greater good. At the same time, the media was a constant, looming presence. Rumors occasionally surfaced, driven by perceptive journalists, anonymous sources, or leaks from less trusted quarters. Each time, palace communications teams sprang into action, crafting narratives, issuing denials, or reinforcing secrecy through controlled messaging. Yet the tighter the palace tried to hold the reins, the more intense public curiosity became. The tension between concealment and speculation created a pressure cooker atmosphere, with each passing day increasing the stakes of exposure. Medical professionals involved in the king's care faced their own ethical dilemmas. Doctors had taken oaths to uphold patient confidentiality, yet the public nature of the monarchy added layers of complexity. Balancing professional duty with public expectation required delicate negotiation. Decisions about treatment options, timing, and disclosure were not made in isolation. They involved coordination with advisors, family members, and security personnel. Every consultation, every procedure, was a negotiation between medical necessity and operational discretion. Within this intricate web of secrecy, small mistakes had the potential to unravel months of careful planning. A misinterpreted statement, an accidental social media post, or an unguarded comment could spark international headlines within hours. Staff members were hyper-aware of the fragility of the situation. Training sessions were conducted to ensure everyone understood the gravity of the king's condition and the importance of maintaining absolute discretion. The palace became a world unto itself, governed by rules and protocols designed to safeguard both a person and an institution simultaneously. As the months wore on, the psychological impact became more apparent. Advisors reported increased stress levels, moments of fatigue, and tension that occasionally flared into disagreement. Family interactions, even those meant to be private, were shadowed by the awareness that any misstep could have profound consequences. Yet, amidst this pressure, there was also a sense of shared purpose. Everyone involved understood the historical significance of their role, the trust placed in them, and the potential consequences of failure. The palace operated like a finely tuned machine, each individual contributing to the larger goal of safeguarding the king's privacy while ensuring the institution remained intact. All of these internal pressures came to a head in the days immediately preceding the broadcast. Advisors debated not only the content of the king's address, but also its timing, presentation, and anticipated reception. Media strategy teams conducted simulations of public reaction, political analysts prepared briefings, and family members rehearsed their supportive responses. Every detail, from lighting in the studio to the phrasing of a single sentence, was scrutinized with obsessive care. This was a performance, but it was one with life-altering stakes for both the king and the monarchy. In the end, the cover-up was maintained until the precise moment of the broadcast, a testament to the discipline, loyalty, and coordination of those within the palace. When the king finally stepped in front of the cameras, years of careful concealment culminated in a single, historic moment of truth. The audience would witness only the outcome, the revelation of illness and the signal of transition. But behind the scenes lay a story of meticulous planning, high-stakes negotiation, and the extraordinary lengths a royal household would go to protect both a person and an institution. The consequences of this concealment, once revealed to the public, would be immense. Debates about ethics, transparency, and trust would dominate media cycles. Historians would dissect the timeline, scrutinize decisions, and contextualize actions within centuries of royal precedent. Citizens would wrestle with complex emotions, balancing empathy for the king with frustration over delayed disclosure. And for Princess Anne, the careful orchestration of secrecy set the stage for a new era of responsibility, one that demanded both emotional resilience and strategic acumen. The palace had succeeded in maintaining secrecy, but it had come at a cost. Tensions were high, staff were stretched thin, and the emotional toll was palpable. Yet, when the broadcast finally aired, the months of planning, negotiation, and ethical deliberation converged in a moment of clarity and impact. What the public saw was a king, composed yet vulnerable, speaking with authority and honesty. What remained behind the scenes was a testament to the extraordinary lengths required to protect both a family and a centuries-old institution, a story of discretion, loyalty, and the human complexity of power. The moment King Charles's historic broadcast ended, the world seemed to pause. Television screens in living rooms from London to New York, from Sydney to Toronto, flickered with the king's composed yet vulnerable figure, his words resonating with a gravity that few had ever witnessed. In that instant, millions of people realized they were part of a story far larger than any headline, far more personal than a press release could ever convey. The king had revealed a truth that had been meticulously concealed for months. His battle with advanced cancer and his deliberate choice, along with the palace, to keep the nation unaware. Social media erupted within seconds. Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok feeds flooded with reactions, hashtags trending faster than any prior royal event. Some posts expressed shock and concern, mourning the personal pain the king had endured in private. Others were filled with anger, criticizing the palace for withholding such critical information from the public. The tension was palpable. Empathy wrestled with outrage in every comment thread, in every share, in every live news segment attempting to make sense of the revelation. Memes and viral clips began circulating almost immediately, illustrating the speed at which public discourse now moved. Across the United Kingdom, conversations turned to living rooms, pubs, and cafes. Citizens debated the ethics of concealment. Some argued fervently that the king's health was inherently a private matter and that the palace had acted correctly to avoid destabilizing the monarchy and the nation. Others felt betrayed, claiming the public deserved transparency, especially considering the monarchy's symbolic role as a unifying figurehead. The debate was deeply personal, touching upon trust, loyalty, and the delicate balance between privacy and accountability. Political figures entered the discourse almost immediately. Members of Parliament weighed in, carefully navigating the fine line between respect for the monarchy and their obligation to the public. Opposition leaders questioned whether withholding such critical information had influenced national decisions, while government spokespersons reiterated support for the king and respect for the protocols that guided the palace. In Westminster, debates unfolded behind closed doors, with advisors analyzing potential implications on constitutional stability and international relations. Every comment was measured, knowing that words could inflame public sentiment or be interpreted as criticism of the monarchy during a sensitive period. Internationally, the news was no less dramatic. Monarchies across Europe, accustomed to secrecy and discretion in matters of royal health, observed with keen interest. Diplomats and royal correspondents compared protocols, historical precedents, and potential consequences. Headlines in Paris, Berlin, and Rome ranged from solemn tributes to analytical critiques, dissecting the timing and delivery of the king's disclosure. In the United States, news anchors framed the story as a revelation of extraordinary discretion, while also highlighting questions of transparency and the public's right to know. Everywhere, the narrative was the same. A monarch revealed a private struggle under unprecedented circumstances, and the world was reacting in real time. The media frenzy was relentless. Television networks cut regular programming to provide continuous analysis. Experts on monarchy, constitutional law, and medical ethics were called upon to contextualize the revelation. Anchors speculated on the timing of the broadcast, the potential succession plan involving Princess Anne, and the impact on public confidence. Newspapers scrambled to revise headlines for online editions. Social media teams rushed to publish updates, and journalists debated live on air about whether the palace had been right or wrong to maintain secrecy. The speed and intensity of media coverage reflected both the public's fascination with royalty and the unprecedented nature of the disclosure. Public demonstrations began within hours in major cities. Crowds gathered outside Buckingham Palace, waving Union Jacks, holding placards with messages of support, and, in some cases, expressing frustration. Emotions were raw and diverse. Some mourned silently, moved by the king's vulnerability, while others vocally demanded answers about how long the palace had concealed the truth. Commentators observed that the reaction was not uniform, reflecting the complex relationship between the monarchy and the people. The institution, revered for centuries, now faced scrutiny in a way that blended human empathy with civic expectation. Online, the divide was just as pronounced. Opinion polls conducted in the immediate aftermath revealed startling contrasts. A significant portion of respondents expressed sympathy for the king and his family, recognizing the personal challenge of managing a private illness while upholding a public role. Simultaneously, a sizable number criticized the palace for lack of transparency, arguing that concealment eroded trust and set a troubling precedent. Social media threads became arenas for debate, with supporters and critics exchanging perspectives, anecdotes, and historical comparisons. The intensity of these discussions reflected not only the public's engagement, but also the emotional stakes embedded in the story. Royal historians and experts weighed in to provide context and perspective. They highlighted the delicate balancing act that monarchs have historically faced when dealing with personal health crises. Comparisons were made to King George VI, whose own illness had been partially concealed during the later years of World War II, and to Queen Elizabeth II, whose health updates were carefully managed to maintain public confidence. Analysts noted that secrecy had always been a feature of monarchy, yet the contemporary media environment, with 24-hour news cycles, social media, and global scrutiny, amplified both the risks and the consequences of concealment. Princess Anne's role became a focal point in both media coverage and public discussion. Analysts speculated on how her poised and informed handling of internal family matters positioned her as a stabilizing force. Royal correspondents highlighted her ability to navigate the complex intersection of duty, loyalty, and emerging responsibility for the monarchy's future. Public sentiment toward and was largely positive. Her composed demeanor during interviews, engagements, and brief statements contributed to a perception of resilience and continuity. In a moment of potential instability, her presence offered reassurance to both the family and the public. Political commentators, too, examined potential implications for governance. The monarchy's symbolic authority is tightly intertwined with national identity and public morale. Questions arose about whether the concealment of the king's illness could influence government operations, public trust, or even the perception of national stability. Although the United Kingdom operates under a constitutional monarchy, where elected officials hold formal power, the symbolic role of the sovereign carries immense weight. Every revelation, therefore, had both practical and psychological consequences, affecting how citizens perceived leadership, tradition, and institutional credibility. International observers were equally intrigued. News outlets around the globe dissected the cultural implications of royal secrecy and the human drama unfolding within Buckingham Palace. Some framed the story as an extraordinary act of discretion and loyalty, emphasizing the monarchy's ability to manage sensitive information with remarkable skill. Others highlighted ethical concerns, questioning whether withholding such news from the public constituted a breach of trust. Editorials ranged from empathetic tributes to critical examinations of institutional transparency, illustrating the global fascination with the British monarchy and the universal resonance of human vulnerability. The emotional reactions of ordinary citizens were both striking and revealing. Letters, phone calls, and social media posts poured into newsrooms, expressing support, concern, and occasional anger. Many shared personal stories of resilience in the face of illness, drawing parallels between their experiences and the king's own struggle. Others reflected on the tension between public duty and private life, articulating empathy for the emotional burden carried by both the monarch and his family. The collective response highlighted a profound human connection. Despite differences in social status, people recognized the universal themes of fear, courage, and responsibility. In the days following the broadcast, media outlets shifted from immediate reactions to investigative coverage. Journalists sought to uncover the timeline of concealment, the internal deliberations, and the broader context of palace operations. Historical analysis was paired with expert commentary to provide depth and credibility. Each article, segment, and editorial contributed to a broader narrative, one that explored not only the king's health, but also the complex ethical and operational decisions required to maintain both personal privacy and public confidence. Among the public, trust in the monarchy was tested. Surveys indicated that while many citizens admired the king's resilience and composure, there was lingering skepticism about the palace's decision-making processes. Questions arose about accountability, the balance between transparency and discretion, and the broader implications for institutional integrity. Debate flourished not only in traditional media, but also in online forums, podcasts, and televised panel discussions, reflecting the diverse perspectives and emotional stakes at play. The global impact of the broadcast was similarly profound. In countries with historic or cultural ties to the British monarchy, citizens engaged in reflective discussions about leadership, vulnerability, and the role of symbolic authority. In nations without direct ties, the story captured imagination, curiosity, and empathy, demonstrating the monarchy's unique ability to transcend borders and evoke strong emotional responses worldwide. The immediacy and universality of the reaction underscored a central truth. The revelation was not merely a royal health update, but a story about human fragility, institutional responsibility, and the intricate interplay between public image and private reality. As the initial shock subsided, deeper questions emerged. How long had the palace known the extent of the king's illness? What were the criteria for determining who could be informed and when? How had internal dynamics, including the involvement of Princess Anne, influenced the decision-making process? Experts speculated on the psychological, operational, and historical ramifications, noting that the story would likely be studied for decades as an example of crisis management, ethical deliberation, and the human dimension of leadership. The broadcast had achieved more than just disclosure of a medical condition. It had revealed the profound complexity of royal life, the extraordinary lengths taken to protect both family and institution, and the human emotions that underpin centuries of tradition. Public outrage, empathy, speculation, and reflection coalesced into a collective reckoning with the monarchies. The broadcast had barely ended when Buckingham Palace itself became a crucible of tension. Behind the iconic gates, in the corridors lined with centuries of history, a storm was quietly brewing. While the world watched, analyzed, and debated the king's revelation, the members of the royal family, along with key advisors, were grappling with the immediate reality. The private acknowledgement of the king's advanced cancer had now been made public, irrevocably changing their daily lives, their responsibilities, and the delicate dynamics that had held the monarchy together for decades. Princess Anne, long regarded as the most pragmatic and composed member of the royal family, suddenly found herself thrust into a position of unprecedented significance. Though her role as heir apparent to the day-to-day operational duties of the monarchy had always been understood within palace walls, the global broadcast catapulted her into the public spotlight in a way that was entirely unplanned. Advisors whispered about succession contingencies, medical oversight, and public messaging strategies, but the reality was that Anne had to navigate personal grief while projecting unwavering strength to both her family and the nation. The burden was immense, and few outside the palace could comprehend the intricate balancing act required. Within the private chambers of Buckingham Palace, the mood was somber yet fraught with tension. Senior aides and royal advisors convened urgently to assess the immediate and long-term implications of the king's disclosure. Every communication was scrutinized, every decision weighed against potential public perception. Security protocols were heightened, ensuring that no unauthorized information could leak further, while communication strategies were refined to maintain a sense of calm and continuity. The palace, often seen as a symbol of Stoic tradition, now found itself navigating uncharted waters where every word, gesture, and action would be dissected by millions worldwide. Prince William and Prince Harry, though miles apart during the broadcast, felt the impact acutely. Reports suggest that the brothers immediately engaged in private conversations, attempting to reconcile personal emotions with the weight of public responsibility. For William, the revelation underscored the looming transition of duties and the urgent need to step into a role that was once only theoretical. For Harry, already distanced from the core of royal life, the broadcast triggered a complex mix of concern, regret, and reflection on his own place within the family hierarchy. The emotional tension between them, always subtly present, now carried the amplified weight of their father's vulnerability and the nation's watchful eye. Advisors within the palace reportedly struggled with how to manage the family's exposure. Protocol dictated discretion, yet the king's candid disclosure left little room for controlled messaging. Every aide faced the impossible task of responding to the world without betraying the personal grief and turmoil simmering inside. Analysts later noted that the palace's communication team had been thrust into a high-pressure scenario resembling a crisis management drill. Only this was real, global, and laden with emotional complexity. The juxtaposition of operational precision and human vulnerability created a unique tension that few outside the walls could fully appreciate. Queen Consort Camilla, observing her husband's broadcast from a private wing, was reported to have been deeply affected. Sources indicate that she immediately called Princess and to coordinate private support for the king while simultaneously preparing for public engagements. Camilla's own role in managing public perception, personal care, and internal family morale was suddenly magnified. For years, her image had been carefully curated, and now, in a moment of genuine vulnerability from her husband, she had to navigate both empathy and public expectation simultaneously. The emotional weight was enormous, and her composure under pressure became a point of quiet admiration within palace circles. Meanwhile, the king's private medical team was inundated with calls and internal memos. Though they had been managing his care discreetly for months, the public disclosure now required rapid recalibration. Decisions regarding treatment schedules, media access, and official statements had to be harmonized with both medical confidentiality and royal protocol. Internal reports suggest that doctors were balancing patient advocacy with public relations, a combination rarely required at such an elevated level. Every action, from hospital visits to personal care routines, became subject to intense scrutiny, forcing a constant interplay between privacy, protocol, and perception. Staff members across the palace reportedly experienced a spectrum of emotions. Long-serving aides who had grown accustomed to quiet, discreet management of royal affairs found themselves thrust into crisis management. Households that once operated seamlessly in the background now became highly visible, with every movement potentially newsworthy. Courtiers described a mixture of anxiety, dedication, and loyalty, striving to maintain normalcy in a world that had suddenly shifted into chaos. Their personal attachments to the royal family, combined with professional responsibilities, created a complex emotional landscape in which every decision carried both practical and symbolic weight. Interpersonal dynamics within the family were tested more than ever. Heated discussions reportedly took place regarding how much information should be shared internally, how to address the press proactively, and how to maintain continuity of monarchy operations. There were disagreements, subtle power struggles, and moments of intense emotion. Princess, and often the mediator and voice of reason, reportedly worked tirelessly to bridge gaps, manage tensions, and ensure that decisions reflected both loyalty to the king and practical considerations for the monarchy's stability. The ripple effects extended beyond Buckingham Palace. Windsor Castle, Sandringham, and other royal residences became points of coordination, with family members and advisors connecting via secure communications to manage schedules, public appearances, and private consultations. Every household had to consider its role in both supporting the king and maintaining the image of continuity for the monarchy. The logistical challenge was enormous. Coordinating transportation, public statements, personal care, and security, all under the intense scrutiny of global media. Princess Anne's emergence as a central figure in palace operations was not merely ceremonial. Insiders suggest she took on active oversight of domestic affairs, public relations, and crisis planning. She coordinated closely with advisors to ensure that the king's wishes were honored, while also preparing for the eventual delegation of responsibilities. Her ability to combine emotional intelligence with operational acumen became crucial. She had to anticipate potential conflicts, manage internal disagreements, and provide a stabilizing presence for younger family members. all while maintaining the public's trust and confidence. In the midst of internal coordination, private moments of vulnerability surfaced. Accounts suggest that family members experienced quiet reflection, moments of tears, and the weight of unspoken fears. Despite their public personas of strength and decorum, they faced the same human reactions to illness and uncertainty as anyone else. These moments, though rarely visible to the outside world, shaped decisions, conversations, and interactions, adding layers of emotional complexity to every choice made within the palace. Security concerns intensified following the broadcast. Intelligence teams and palace security worked around the clock to prevent misinformation, leaks, or unauthorized access. The global attention heightened the risk of speculation, intrusion, and sensationalism. Every document, every conversation, and every movement was subject to scrutiny, both internal and external. The palace, while accustomed to high-profile security operations, faced a new challenge, protecting not only the king's physical safety, but also the family's privacy and the integrity of their institutional reputation amid unprecedented global attention. Meanwhile, the younger generation of royals faced their own set of challenges. Prince William and Prince Harry were observed navigating both personal grief and the pressure of public expectation. Their emotional responses varied. Moments of private reflection, strategic discussions with advisors, and interactions with family members all played into a larger tapestry of royal dynamics. Observers later noted that their ability to reconcile personal emotion with public duty would become a defining factor in the monarchy's continuity and public perception. Throughout the palace, advisors emphasized the importance of consistency and discretion. They crafted internal protocols to manage communication, engagement, and care, all while balancing the king's privacy against the inevitability of public curiosity. Meetings were held with meticulous attention to detail, from scheduling interviews to managing potential media inquiries. The goal was to maintain an operational rhythm that reflected both stability and sensitivity, recognizing that even minor missteps could be amplified into major controversies in the global spotlight. The emotional weight of the king's disclosure also prompted discussions about long-term planning. Succession contingencies, estate management, and public duties were all reevaluated in light of the illness. Advisors worked closely with Princess and the most experienced and capable member of the family to ensure that transitions could occur smoothly, without disrupting the delicate balance of tradition, duty, and public expectation. Each decision was carefully weighed, as missteps could reverberate across both the nation and the world, affecting perceptions of leadership, trust, and institutional continuity. Amid the whirlwind of strategy, grief, and logistics, moments of human connection were quietly observed. Family members reportedly gathered in private, sharing reflections, offering support, and acknowledging the shared vulnerability that the broadcast had revealed. These intimate interactions, shielded from the public eye, underscored the profound emotional complexity of royal life, a world in which power, duty, and public perception coexist with the same human fears, love, and loyalty that define any family. The palace, as an institution, faced a defining moment. The broadcast had exposed not just the king's health, but also the intricate mechanisms by which the royal family balances public expectation with personal privacy. Advisors, staff, and family members were forced to navigate a landscape where every decision carried moral, operational, and emotional weight. The revelation had shifted dynamics, accelerated responsibilities, and tested the very framework of palace operations. Yet through the turmoil, one constant emerged: Princess and steady presence, guiding decisions, mediating tensions, and embodying the continuity and resilience that the monarchy would rely upon in the months. As soon as the broadcast concluded, the world erupted in a whirlwind of reaction. News channels across continents scrambled to cover the unprecedented revelation, while newspapers shifted into emergency print cycles to accommodate the shocking disclosure. The headline, repeated in countless variations, left no doubt about the gravity of the situation. King Charles had revealed that he was battling late-stage cancer, a fact that had been deliberately withheld from the public. The revelation was not just about illness. It was a seismic moment in the history of the monarchy, a public acknowledgement of vulnerability in an institution historically defined by stoicism and impenetrable composure. Social media exploded almost instantaneously. Within minutes, platforms like Twitter, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter, were flooded with posts, threads, and commentary from ordinary citizens, celebrities, political analysts, and royal commentators. Hashtags related to the broadcast began trending worldwide, drawing attention not only to the king's health, but also to the palace's decision to conceal it for so long. Public reactions varied widely. Some expressed deep sympathy and support, others voiced outrage at the secrecy, and many debated the implications for the monarchy's stability. Across the globe, millions logged in simultaneously, sharing, reposting, and analyzing every word, tone, and inflection from the broadcast. Media organizations immediately shifted into overdrive. Anchors and journalists dissected the broadcast frame by frame, scrutinizing the king's facial expressions, posture, and choice of words. Analysts debated whether the broadcast signaled a deliberate preparation for succession, a plea for public empathy, or a subtle warning of impending challenges for the monarchy. News outlets sought interviews with experts in royal affairs, oncology, political science, and communications, creating a non-stop loop of coverage that left no angle unexplored. Television ratings surged, online viewership metrics broke records, and the world seemed glued to screens, desperate to understand not only the king's health, but also the underlying implications for the future of the crown. In the United Kingdom, public sentiment was a complex mix of shock, admiration, and concern. Polling organizations reported that a significant portion of the population felt both sympathy for the king and unease about the palace's decades-long secrecy. Citizens debated whether the monarchy had acted responsibly by concealing the illness or whether the public had been deliberately misled to preserve an image of stability. Street interviews captured a mosaic of opinions. Elderly citizens recalling previous monarchs' discretion, young adults questioning the relevance of hereditary leadership, and middle-aged professionals weighing the impact of potential succession on national identity. The conversation was as multifaceted as the population itself, revealing the delicate interplay between loyalty, expectation, and accountability. Internationally, the broadcast prompted an equally fervent response. In Europe, commentators drew comparisons to historical instances of monarchs concealing illness, examining how previous royal families navigated public perception while dealing with personal health crises. In the United States and Canada, analysts speculated on the potential political and diplomatic consequences, noting that the stability of the British monarchy had subtle yet meaningful influence on global relationships, trade agreements, and cultural diplomacy. Media outlets in Asia, Africa, and South America ran feature stories, highlighting the fascination with royal tradition, leadership vulnerability, and the human side of an institution often perceived as distant and ceremonial. The global response emphasized that while the monarchy's sphere of power is largely symbolic, its cultural and emotional resonance remains profound across nations. Royal commentators quickly recognized a secondary layer to the story: the long-term consequences of the palace's secrecy. Opinion pieces, editorials, and social media posts questioned whether transparency might have mitigated public concern, allowed for better health advocacy, or fostered trust. Critics suggested that the concealment, though intended to preserve stability, might have inadvertently fueled conspiracy theories, sensationalist reporting, and public skepticism. Supporters argued that the king and palace had acted in the best interest of both the institution and the public, shielding the nation from undue worry while ensuring continuity in governance. These debates illustrated the delicate balance the monarchy must maintain between image management, tradition, and ethical responsibility. Social media also became a battlefield for opinion and interpretation. Memes, GIFs, and viral videos proliferated, often blending humor with critique, and sometimes veering into the deeply personal. Some users expressed heartfelt solidarity with the king, sharing stories of their own experiences with cancer, illness, and family resilience. Others leveraged the moment to critique royal opulence, historical controversies, or perceived disconnection from ordinary citizens. Within hours, thousands of posts discussing the palace's priorities, the role of princess and the responsibilities of Prince William and Prince Harry had amassed millions of engagements. Analysts noted that the volume and intensity of the online response reflected not only curiosity, but also the profound emotional investment the public maintains in the monarchy. Among the public, discussions about succession surged. Experts in constitutional law, royal protocol, and political science offered commentary on how princess and would assume operational authority, how Prince William's responsibilities might shift, and what implications this could have for Prince Harry's position in the family. Radio talk shows, podcasts, and online forums became arenas of lively debate, as ordinary citizens speculated on the timing, strategy, and consequences of the king's disclosure. While the monarchy's rules of succession are codified, the human and emotional realities of leadership transition, particularly under the glare of public scrutiny, introduced layers of uncertainty that captivated global audiences. In addition to public and media reactions, the broadcast sparked immediate engagement from political figures and institutions. Members of parliament, opposition leaders, and international dignitaries issued statements expressing concern, support, and solidarity. Diplomatic communications were sent discreetly to ensure that allies and foreign governments were apprised of the king's condition while respecting the boundaries of privacy and protocol. Analysts suggested that these interactions were crucial not only for maintaining stability, but also for signaling continuity to the wider international community, underscoring the subtle influence the British monarchy wields in global affairs despite its primarily ceremonial role. Celebrity commentators and influencers also weighed in, adding another layer to the media frenzy. Public figures from entertainment, sports, and business industries shared opinions, videos, and social media posts that amplified the story's reach and emotional resonance. Some framed the king's disclosure as a deeply human moment, drawing parallels between royal responsibility and personal vulnerability. Others focused on palace secrecy, questioning why the illness had been hidden for so long and what this revealed about institutional priorities. The blend of celebrity commentary, expert analysis, and public discourse created a media ecosystem that was simultaneously informative, emotional, and sensational. The global response was not limited to commentary. Charitable organizations and health advocacy groups also entered the conversation. Cancer research foundations, public health campaigns, and support organizations highlighted the king's condition to raise awareness about advanced stage cancer, early detection, and treatment options. Public campaigns drew attention to the personal struggles faced by patients and families, framing the king's disclosure as both a moment of vulnerability and a potential catalyst for social impact. Many citizens were inspired to donate, participate in advocacy, or share personal narratives, further intertwining the monarchy's human dimension with broader societal engagement. Amid this media and public storm, the palace was faced with the challenge of managing misinformation and speculation. Rumors circulated rapidly about the severity of the illness, potential treatment options, and internal family dynamics. Analysts noted that in the absence of transparent communication, the vacuum was quickly filled with conjecture, often amplified by social media algorithms. The palace's communications team had to act decisively, issuing carefully worded statements to clarify facts, reinforce stability, and reassure both domestic and international audiences. The delicate task was to maintain the dignity of the institution while countering misinformation in a fast-moving, global media environment. Public opinion was not monolithic. Surveys revealed generational divides, with older citizens generally expressing deep sympathy and concern, while younger audiences debated the monarchy's relevance and questioned the secrecy surrounding the king's condition. Discussions on university campuses, in workplaces, and across social groups reflected broader societal trends, highlighting how historical institutions must navigate modern expectations for transparency, accountability, and emotional authenticity. The broadcast had catalyzed not just a discussion about health, but also a broader dialogue about trust, leadership, and the evolving role of monarchy in contemporary society. Amid the frenzy, one narrative consistently emerged: the public's fascination with Princess Anne's role. Social media discussions, news articles, and expert commentary emphasized her readiness to step into operational duties, her calm under pressure, and her ability to balance family loyalty with public responsibility. In a moment of national vulnerability, and emerged as a symbol of stability, competence, and continuity, garnering both admiration and curiosity. Analysts suggested that her visibility might shift public perception of the monarchy, reinforcing the idea that leadership is not solely defined by titles or inheritance, but by the capacity to act decisively in moments of crisis. The broadcast also prompted reflection on the broader cultural and historical context. Scholars, historians, and journalists drew parallels between King Charles's disclosure and previous monarchs' experiences with illness, public expectation, and personal privacy. Comparisons were made to Queen Victoria, King George VI, and other figures whose health crises had been handled privately, often resulting in speculation, anxiety, and societal disruption. The contrast between past discretion and modern transparency highlighted the tension between tradition and contemporary media demands, revealing the evolving expectations placed upon the royal family in a hyper-connected, globalized world. As the dust from the king's historic broadcast settled, attention immediately shifted to Princess Anne. Known historically for her discretion, professionalism, and unwavering dedication to duty, and had suddenly become the focal point of global scrutiny. The public's curiosity was palpable. Social media buzzed with speculation, news anchors analyzed her every past decision, and historians compared her to figures in royal history who had assumed leadership under crisis. But unlike other members of the family, Anne was not burdened by media controversy or personal scandal. Her reputation as the princess who works suddenly became central to the monarchy's survival narrative. Within hours of the broadcast, royal aides confirmed that Anne had assumed operational authority in the palace. While King Charles's statement had been measured and calm, it was clear that the logistics of governance, ceremonial duties, and public communication would temporarily be directed by her. This was not merely symbolic. It required navigating delicate family dynamics, political liaison, and the broader optics of public reassurance. Palace insiders revealed that Anne had spent countless hours over the previous decade preparing for precisely this kind of contingency, often in consultation with senior advisors and constitutional experts. Her methodical approach meant that, for the first time, the public could see a royal ready to handle a crisis with precision and poise. Anne's first actions reflected her strategic acumen. She immediately convened meetings with senior officials to ensure that continuity of governance and national stability were maintained. Unlike a headline-driven response, she focused on meticulous planning, reviewing schedules, prioritizing public engagements, and establishing clear lines of communication between royal aides and government ministers. The message was clear: while her father faced a life-threatening illness, the monarchy's operational functionality would remain intact. Analysts noted that this calm and proactive stance contrasted sharply with the intense media speculation and sensationalism that surrounded the king's disclosure. In public appearances, Anne projected both strength and humanity. Her speeches, carefully crafted in collaboration with palace communications experts, acknowledged the gravity of her father's illness while reinforcing confidence in the monarchy's ability to persevere. She referenced the king's decades of service, expressed empathy for citizens grappling with personal hardships, and subtly reminded the public that the monarchy was more than a collection of individuals. It was an institution built on continuity and duty. Social media engagement around her appearances surged, with citizens praising her for her clarity, poise, and calm presence during an emotionally charged time. Behind the scenes, Anne navigated a complex web of family dynamics. Prince William and Prince Harry, long entangled in publicized feuds and private disagreements, were reportedly called into private consultations. Sources indicated that Anne's neutral, principled approach helped mediate tense conversations, keeping the focus on operational responsibilities rather than personal grievances. Palace insiders described her as a stabilizing force, balancing empathy with firmness, and ensuring that no individual drama overshadowed the critical task of preserving national confidence in the monarchy. The role Anne assumed also involved navigating sensitive political terrain. The British monarchy, while largely ceremonial, plays a symbolic role in the nation's democratic system. Prime ministers, ministers, and civil servants rely on the royal family for ceremonial duties, state guidance, and continuity. Anne's decisive engagement with government officials reassured political leaders that despite the king's health challenges, the monarchy could maintain its responsibilities without disruption. Analysts suggested that her proactive stance might even strengthen the monarchy's credibility, demonstrating that royal leadership was capable, adaptable, and resilient in times of crisis. Anne's public visibility also carried symbolic weight. Unlike other members of the family who often rely on media-managed appearances, she maintained a careful balance of exposure, visible enough to reassure the public, but measured enough to preserve dignity and authority. Her engagements, ranging from hospital visits to ceremonial events, were broadcast live, covered extensively by global media, and highlighted her commitment to duty. Commentators noted that her measured tone, unwavering focus, and respect for institutional tradition created a stark contrast with the sensationalist coverage of her siblings, enhancing her credibility in the eyes of both citizens and international observers. The princess's strategic communications extended beyond appearances. She oversaw the issuance of official statements, crafted messaging for social media, and ensured that information regarding the king's condition was accurate, respectful, and transparent. Her careful attention to language, timing, and tone reflected an understanding that public perception was as critical as operational control. Analysts emphasized that Anne's mastery of communications was essential not only for managing immediate concerns, but also for establishing a framework for succession, should the king's condition worsen. As Anne assumed her leadership role, questions naturally arose about the future of the monarchy. Historians drew comparisons to moments in royal history when sudden illness or death thrust a previously secondary figure into primary leadership. In these instances, success depended on a combination of preparation, public trust, and strategic decision-making. Anne's record suggested she possessed all three. Her long-standing dedication to charity, public service, and operational excellence created a reservoir of credibility upon which she could draw. The contrast with previous periods of royal scandal or uncertainty underscored the uniqueness of the current situation. A capable, prepared, and widely respected figure stepping forward at a critical moment. Internationally, Anne's leadership drew attention as well. Foreign dignitaries, ambassadors, and heads of state monitored her actions closely. Her ability to reassure allies, maintain ceremonial continuity, and manage communication with foreign governments was lauded in diplomatic circles. Analysts suggested that this visibility could reshape perceptions of the British monarchy abroad, demonstrating a level of competence, pragmatism, and authority rarely highlighted in media portrayals. The narrative emerging globally was clear. The monarchy had a capable steward in Anne, one who could bridge historical tradition with contemporary expectations for leadership and transparency. Amid the operational responsibilities, Anne also faced the challenge of maintaining the morale and cohesion of the royal household itself. Staff, advisors, and household members were acutely aware of the heightened scrutiny, the emotional weight of the king's illness, and the pressure to maintain protocol under unprecedented conditions. Reports indicated that Anne spent significant time ensuring that personnel were supported, duties were clearly assigned, and communication channels remained open. Her focus on internal cohesion mirrored her public strategy. Competence, clarity, and calm were the guiding principles, both for the institution and for the individuals who sustained it. Public perception of Anne's leadership evolved rapidly in the wake of the broadcast. Polls indicated a surge in approval ratings for the princess, with citizens expressing confidence in her ability to guide the monarchy through a delicate period. Social media commentary reflected admiration for her decisiveness, empathy, and commitment to duty. Analysts noted that this visibility could have long-term implications for the public's trust in the monarchy, potentially reshaping narratives that had previously centered on controversy, personal drama, or generational tension. Anne's emergence as a capable leader introduced a renewed sense of stability at a moment of uncertainty. However, the road was not without challenges. Critics questioned whether Anne could balance operational leadership with the emotional complexities of family loyalty, particularly given the fraught histories of her siblings. Questions also arose about succession. If the king's condition worsened, how quickly could the monarchy transition operational authority, and what would be the public's reaction? And strategic communication, careful public appearances, and operational planning addressed these concerns preemptively, but uncertainty remained an undercurrent in every engagement. The tension between public expectation, personal duty, and institutional preservation became the defining narrative of her leadership during this period. The broadcast and Anne's response also sparked a broader cultural conversation. Citizens, commentators, and media outlets debated the role of transparency in leadership, the balance between privacy and public trust, and the evolving expectations for symbolic institutions in modern society. Anne's competence highlighted the potential for leaders to inspire confidence not through spectacle, but through preparedness, consistency, and integrity. Educational forums, university discussions, and think tanks cited her actions as a case study in crisis leadership, emphasizing the interplay between authority, empathy, and strategic foresight. Anne's leadership also reinvigorated discussions about the monarchy's relevance. Her engagement demonstrated that the royal family was capable of responding effectively to crisis without compromising its symbolic authority. Observers argued that her emergence could recalibrate public attitudes, emphasizing competence and service over celebrity or sensationalism. Citizens expressed renewed interest in the monarchy, not simply as a cultural institution, but as a living, functioning entity capable of navigating complex societal expectations. As days turned into weeks, Princess Anne's operational role became firmly established. She continued to coordinate public engagements, liaise with government officials, manage internal palace communications, and maintain visibility with the public. Analysts suggested that her leadership style, marked by calm authority, strategic planning, and ethical consistency, might serve as a model for future royal generations. Unlike prior periods dominated by scandal or media-driven narratives, Anne's stewardship emphasized substance over style, action over rhetoric, and continuity over improvisation. The global media began to frame Anne's emergence as a turning point. Feature articles, documentaries, and analysis segments highlighted her competence, her dedication, and the contrast between her measured approach and the dramatic events often associated with other family members. The narrative centered not only on the immediate operational effectiveness, but also on her symbolic embodiment of stability, resilience, and trustworthiness. In a moment when the monarchy's future seemed uncertain, Anne's leadership offered a clear, credible anchor. Even critics acknowledged her effectiveness. Opinion pieces in newspapers and digital publications noted that Anne had succeeded in balancing the dual imperatives of public reassurance and internal management. While questions about the king's health remained, the continuity of the monarchy, public confidence, and operational stability had been preserved through her decisive action. Analysts suggested that this period could. The public reaction to the king's historic broadcast and Princess Anne's rapid assumption of operational duties was immediate, intense, and multifaceted. Across the United Kingdom, citizens experienced a mixture of shock, sympathy, admiration, and concern. For many, the revelation of King Charles's advanced illness, coupled with the palace's previous secrecy, stirred deep emotions. Conversations that had previously been confined to private spaces, family homes, workplaces, and local communities suddenly entered public discourse on a national scale. Social media exploded with commentary, hashtags trended for hours, and news cycles were dominated by both speculation and analysis. The emotional intensity was palpable. In households across Britain, families gathered around televisions, radios, and devices to absorb the news. For older generations, the announcement triggered reflections on past royal transitions and the enduring presence of the monarchy. For younger audiences, often skeptical of royal authority, the narrative of Princess Anne stepping forward resonated differently. Many were struck not only by the king's vulnerability, but by Anne's preparedness and competence. Public forums revealed a spectrum of reactions. Some celebrated her dedication and focus. Others scrutinized the secrecy that had led to the delayed disclosure of the king's health. Questions about transparency, ethics, and the balance between public interest and personal privacy became central to national conversations. Media coverage reflected this spectrum. Traditional outlets, from newspapers to television channels, presented detailed analyses of the king's condition, historical context, and Anne's operational decisions. Headlines ranged from empathetic, emphasizing the human dimension of illness and service, to critical, questioning why the royal family had concealed the king's advanced cancer for so long. Internationally, global news organizations mirrored this coverage, highlighting the potential implications for British governance, diplomatic relations, and the monarchy's symbolic authority. Commentary often focused on Princess Anne's strategic competence, framing her as a stabilizing figure capable of navigating the palace through unprecedented challenges. Public forums and social media platforms offered a more unfiltered view of reactions. Citizens shared personal anecdotes, expressed frustration with secrecy, and debated the responsibilities of public figures. Memes and viral content emerged almost instantly, some highlighting Anne's calm efficiency, others lampooning the delayed revelation of the king's illness. The mix of humor, criticism, and admiration created a complex tapestry of public sentiment. Sociologists and media analysts observed that these reactions were part of a broader societal negotiation. The public was processing vulnerability, leadership, and institutional accountability simultaneously. Admiration for Princess Anne grew as her actions became more visible. Unlike other members of the royal family who often navigate the glare of celebrity culture, Anne's approach emphasized professionalism, duty, and measured public engagement. Citizens noted her focus on practical leadership, her ability to communicate effectively, and her insistence on operational clarity. Her appearances, whether at hospitals, state events, or public ceremonies, were widely praised for their calm authority and empathy. Polling data indicated a surge in public confidence in the monarchy, largely attributed to her visibility and competence. In this period, Anne's persona, often described historically as reserved or stern, was recontextualized as resolute, capable, and inspiring. Yet the admiration was not universal. Critics seized upon the secrecy surrounding the king's illness, questioning the ethical implications of withholding such information from the public. Op-eds, online forums, and commentary segments debated whether citizens had a right to know about the health of a monarch who, while ceremonial in power, serves as a symbolic figurehead. Questions of transparency became central. Had the royal family prioritized stability over honesty, or had they acted in accordance with long-standing tradition? The debate was particularly intense among political commentators and media ethicists, who weighed the balance between institutional continuity and public accountability. Complicating the discourse was the ongoing narrative surrounding other members of the royal family. Prince William and Prince Harry, historically prominent in public discussions due to previous controversies and media scrutiny, were inevitably compared to Princess Anne's emerging leadership. Analysts and journalists highlighted contrasts. While the brothers had experienced highly publicized disputes and media criticism, Anne's actions were framed as disciplined, focused, and strategically effective. This juxtaposition fueled conversations about generational differences, leadership styles, and the personal qualities deemed necessary to maintain public trust in the monarchy. Public engagement also reflected broader cultural and political dynamics. In a time marked by social change, questions arose about the relevance and adaptability of traditional institutions. Citizens debated not only the monarchy's role in contemporary Britain, but also the qualities they expected from those in positions of symbolic authority. Anne's competence, discipline, and operational clarity became points of reference, illustrating that the monarchy could adapt to modern expectations without sacrificing tradition. The dialogue extended beyond national borders, as international audiences considered the implications for Britain's global image and soft power. Political figures engaged with the unfolding situation carefully. Prime ministers, cabinet members, and parliamentary leaders expressed formal concern for the king's health while acknowledging Anne's operational role. Politicians emphasized continuity, the importance of public reassurance, and the necessity of collaboration with royal advisors. Diplomatic channels also activated, as foreign ambassadors and representatives sought to understand the potential implications for ceremonial duties, state functions, and ongoing international engagements. Analysts suggested that Anne's measured leadership helped to stabilize these communications, offering clarity in a period of potential uncertainty. Media scrutiny intensified around the ethical questions raised by the palace's secrecy. Investigative journalists examined historical precedents, palace protocols, and internal communications. Reports questioned whether the concealment of the king's advanced cancer aligned with institutional norms or represented a strategic decision to maintain public calm. Some commentators argued that transparency should have taken precedence, asserting that citizens have a right to understand the health of a national symbol. Others defended the family's discretion, emphasizing that monarchs are human beings deserving privacy, particularly in matters of personal health. This tension between public expectation and private life became a defining theme of the narrative. Social commentary also explored the emotional resonance of the events. The king's vulnerability, revealed for the first time, humanized the monarchy in a way rarely seen in modern media. Citizens expressed empathy, shared personal stories of family illness, and reflected on the role of duty, sacrifice, and resilience. Princess Anne's leadership was interpreted not merely as operational competence, but as a model of ethical and moral stewardship. Someone who balanced personal loyalty with institutional responsibility, who could inspire confidence while remaining grounded in principle. Global audiences reacted with similar intensity. News coverage spanned continents, and commentary often focused on both the historical significance and the contemporary resonance of Anne's role. International diplomats, media outlets, and historians noted that the situation underscored the delicate balance between tradition and transparency in monarchy. Analysts highlighted the potential for Anne's leadership to reshape perceptions, portraying the British royal family as resilient, capable, and responsive to crisis. The international dialogue also reflected curiosity about succession planning, the interplay between symbolic authority and operational responsibility, and the future trajectory of royal influence in a changing world. Public discourse was not limited to media coverage and official statements. Grassroots movements, online forums, and citizen-led campaigns began to emerge. Some advocated for greater transparency in royal communications, arguing that citizens deserved timely updates on the health and status of the monarchy. Others organized initiatives celebrating Anne's leadership, highlighting her professionalism, ethical commitment, and dedication to service. Public sentiment became a mosaic of admiration, critique, curiosity, and debate, reflecting the complexity of contemporary engagement with national institutions. Interestingly, the scandal and admiration surrounding the events intertwined in unexpected ways. The revelation of secrecy created controversy, while Anne's competence mitigated it. Analysts noted that this dynamic reinforced a narrative of resilience. The monarchy faced internal and external challenges, but could adapt and preserve legitimacy through capable leadership. Citizens and commentators alike framed Anne's emergence as evidence that institutions could withstand both personal vulnerability and public scrutiny without collapsing. Media narratives often emphasized this duality. Headlines juxtaposed scandal with reassurance, secrecy with capability, and personal vulnerability with institutional strength. This framing created a layered understanding for audiences. The king's illness was a humanizing moment. Secrecy provoked critical inquiry, and Princess Anne's leadership provided reassurance that continuity, order, and ethical governance remained intact. Analysts suggested that this multidimensional narrative was particularly effective in sustaining public trust while engaging citizens in meaningful conversation about transparency, duty, and leadership. At the same time, public engagement was not purely abstract or analytical. Citizens responded emotionally, reflecting the personal impact of the events. Families discussed the meaning of service, sacrifice, and resilience. Students explored leadership case studies. Community groups debated the ethics of secrecy versus public responsibility. The narrative extended beyond news coverage, influencing conversations in homes, schools, workplaces, and civic organizations. Public engagement became an active, participatory phenomenon rather than a passive reception of information. As the days progressed, Anne's leadership became increasingly normalized in public perception. Her operational decisions, public engagements, and strategic communication reinforced the idea that the monarchy could function effectively even amidst crisis. Citizens expressed growing confidence. Commentators analyzed her approach in detail, and global audiences recognized the strategic competence she demonstrated. The interplay between scandal, admiration, and institutional credibility created a complex but compelling public narrative, one in which the monarchy's human dimension and operational effectiveness coexisted, guided by capable stewardship. The moment the world learned of King Charles's advanced illness and the palace's strategic secrecy, global political observers began to speculate on the possible consequences for international relations. While the British monarchy is a constitutional and largely ceremonial institution, its symbolic authority carries significant diplomatic weight. Heads of state, foreign ministers, and ambassadors immediately shifted focus, recognizing that the transition of operational responsibilities to princess and could influence bilateral relations, ceremonial functions, and the subtle projection of British soft power. In Europe, governments expressed both concern and curiosity. Traditional allies in France, Germany, and Italy issued formal statements of well-wishing for the king, simultaneously acknowledging Princess Anne's operational role. Diplomatic cables circulated within ministries, analyzing how her approach to leadership might affect long-standing cultural and ceremonial partnerships. European commentators noted that Anne's pragmatic and disciplined style was likely to enhance the predictability of British diplomatic engagement, a reassuring signal amidst potential uncertainty caused by the king's illness. Across the Atlantic, in Washington, D.C., political analysts and government officials examined the news with keen interest. While the monarchy has no formal political authority in the United States, its historical influence and the soft power of the British crown play subtle roles in diplomatic protocols, cultural exchange programs, and symbolic international engagements. U.S. officials discussed the potential need to recalibrate interactions, ensuring that visits, state functions, and ceremonial events accounted for Princess Anne's operational leadership. The White House press corps quickly dissected her leadership style, contrasting it with that of King Charles's public persona and speculating about the implications for Anglo-American relations. The Commonwealth nations, however, faced perhaps the most complex set of reactions. Governments in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and other realms expressed support for King Charles while monitoring the situation closely. The revelation of advanced cancer triggered conversations about the succession and the potential need for and to assume greater responsibilities in representing the crown at ceremonial, constitutional, and civic events. Politicians in these nations deliberated over protocols, public communications, and ceremonial scheduling to ensure continuity and maintain public confidence in their constitutional arrangements. Public opinion in these countries was equally multifaceted, blending concern for the king with admiration for Anne's ability to assume an operational mantle without hesitation. Meanwhile, in Asia, governments and media outlets highlighted the symbolic significance of Princess Anne's emergence. In nations where ceremonial leadership is often intertwined with historical tradition and protocol, analysts noted the British example as illustrative of institutional resilience and operational clarity. Commentators in Japan, India, and Singapore drew parallels between Anne's calm, disciplined management and the values traditionally expected of leadership figures in their own political and social systems. Her visible decisiveness was interpreted as a stabilizing force, reassuring both domestic and international audiences that the British monarchy would continue to function reliably even amid crisis. The Middle East, with its nuanced political and diplomatic landscapes, offered a different lens through which to view the events. Analysts emphasized the importance of ceremonial interactions, state visits, and symbolic leadership in maintaining relationships with European powers. The king's illness, while largely symbolic for foreign governments, nevertheless triggered contingency planning for ongoing engagements. Anne's active leadership reassured diplomats that the monarchy could continue fulfilling its obligations without disruption, providing continuity and predictability in international affairs. Even in regions with historically neutral or distant relationships with Britain, the story resonated. Media outlets in South America, Africa, and the Pacific Islands covered the developments extensively, framing the situation in terms of human interest, institutional continuity, and the potential long-term impact on the monarchy's global image. The narrative of a disciplined, reliable leader stepping forward in the face of personal crisis transcended politics, resonating with audiences who viewed the monarchy both as a symbol of tradition and as an operational institution with worldwide significance. Global markets and economic analysts also registered the news, albeit indirectly. While King Charles's health does not directly influence fiscal policy or market regulation, the monarchy's perceived stability can affect investor confidence, particularly in the realm of tourism, heritage industries, and luxury markets tied to British culture. Analysts noted that Anne's visible leadership and the palace's effective crisis management were likely to mitigate potential economic concerns, signaling to both domestic and international stakeholders that the crown's symbolic authority remained intact and reliable. International press coverage mirrored these nuances. Newspapers in London, New York, Sydney, and Paris ran detailed feature stories, while television networks broadcast in-depth analyses of Anne's leadership style and the operational implications for British diplomacy. Editorials praised her strategic clarity, emotional intelligence, and capacity for decisive action. Simultaneously, critical voices debated the ethics of secrecy surrounding the king's illness, framing the conversation in terms of institutional transparency and the public's right to information. The balance between admiration for Anne's effectiveness and scrutiny of the palace's past decisions created a dynamic, multi-layered global conversation. World leaders responded in varying degrees, shaped by protocol, personal relationships, and the symbolic importance of the British monarchy. Queen Margrethe of Denmark issued a formal message of support, emphasizing solidarity, personal empathy, and recognition of Anne's emerging role. King Felipe of Spain highlighted historical continuity, noting that the British royal family had weathered numerous crises with dignity. In Asia, leaders such as Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India and Prime Minister Fumio Kishida of Japan extended formal greetings and reassurances of continued collaboration, signaling that operational continuity would prevent any disruption to bilateral relations. United Nations diplomats observed the developments as well, considering the broader implications for international ceremonial engagements, human rights advocacy initiatives, and diplomatic representation. Anne's leadership style, emphasizing discipline and protocol, was lauded as conducive to preserving the monarchy's credibility on global platforms. By projecting calm, competence, and operational stability, and reassured international stakeholders that the British monarchy would continue to serve as a reliable ceremonial partner, even in the face of internal challenges. Strategically, Princess Anne's approach was remarkably effective. Unlike some members of the royal family whose public personas are closely tied to media spectacle or personal narratives, and maintained focus on institutional priorities, she prioritized internal coordination, ensuring that diplomatic channels remained operational and that ceremonial obligations were fulfilled without interruption. Analysts noted her ability to balance operational rigor with empathy, demonstrating a leadership style that simultaneously reassured international partners and cultivated domestic confidence. The political implications within the United Kingdom were equally significant. Members of Parliament, political parties, and civic leaders closely observed Anne's interactions with governmental authorities. Questions of ceremonial precedence, succession planning, and constitutional protocol were analyzed in detail. Anne's careful, deliberate public appearances reinforced her capacity to serve as a stabilizing figure, effectively preventing political opportunism or uncertainty from undermining confidence in the monarchy. Internationally, Anne's actions sent a clear message. The British monarchy could adapt to crisis while maintaining its symbolic authority. Her operational decisions demonstrated that ceremonial leadership, even in the context of a deeply personal challenge, could be executed with precision, foresight, and ethical consideration. Analysts contrasted her approach with historical precedents, highlighting instances in which monarchies faced instability or public skepticism and comparing those outcomes with Anne's effective crisis management. In diplomatic terms, Anne's emergence also influenced protocol planning. State visits, ceremonial functions, and engagements with foreign dignitaries required careful adjustments. Ambassadors and foreign ministries coordinated directly with palace advisors, ensuring that N's presence and operational authority were integrated seamlessly into ceremonial schedules. The proactive management of these logistical and symbolic responsibilities reinforced the monarchy's global reputation as an institution capable of operational adaptability and diplomatic finesse. The public, both domestically and internationally, responded to this combination of transparency and competence with fascination and admiration. Commentators highlighted the contrast between the palace's secrecy regarding the king's illness and the clarity of Anne's public actions. Whereas questions about timing, ethics, and public right to information generated debate, Anne's visible dedication and disciplined leadership became a unifying narrative. Citizens and foreign observers alike expressed confidence that the monarchy could endure crisis without losing legitimacy or public trust. Interestingly, Anne's rise in operational prominence also shifted perceptions of gender and leadership within the monarchy. Historically, female members of royal families have often been assigned ceremonial or symbolic roles. Anne's assumption of operational responsibility challenged this paradigm, demonstrating that leadership effectiveness does not correlate with gender, but with discipline, competence, and strategic clarity. Analysts, sociologists, and feminist commentators alike explored how this moment might redefine expectations for female leadership in both royal and broader institutional contexts. As the international discourse continued, political scientists noted that Anne's visible authority could influence future discussions of constitutional monarchy in other nations. Countries with symbolic leadership structures observed her approach as a model for balancing public expectation, operational functionality, and ethical governance. Anne's combination of empathy, professionalism, and strategic foresight provided a template for managing both human vulnerability and institutional responsibility simultaneously. Global audiences also engaged with the narrative on a more personal level. Social media platforms, international forums, and citizen-led initiatives reflected a collective fascination with Anne's leadership. Fans of the monarchy, observers of international politics, and individuals interested in leadership studies analyzed her decisions, public appearances, and communication strategies. The narrative of a disciplined, capable leader stepping into operational authority amidst a personal and institutional crisis resonated across cultures, political systems, and social contexts. Amidst this broad spectrum of reactions, the palace maintained a careful communication strategy. Official statements emphasized continuity, respect for privacy, and operational effectiveness. Princess and herself delivered speeches and participated in public engagements with measured poise, reinforcing confidence in both her personal capacity and the institutional resilience of the monarchy. By managing communication, ceremony, and diplomatic obligations with precision, she ensured that international stakeholders, domestic observers, and the general public perceived stability, continuity, and credibility. The revelation of King Charles's advanced illness did more than ripple across international diplomatic circles. It struck at the very core of the royal family's internal dynamics. For decades, the British monarchy has maintained an intricate web of relationships, balancing personal connections with institutional obligations, public expectations, and media scrutiny. The sudden public disclosure of the king's health, coupled with Princess Anne's rise to operational prominence, immediately tested these dynamics. The palace faced the delicate challenge of ensuring continuity while managing the intense scrutiny of both the media and the public. Internally, the royal family had long cultivated an unspoken hierarchy. King Charles, as the reigning monarch, occupied the central role of authority, while other senior members, including Prince William, Prince Harry, and Princess Anne, navigated complex roles that blended personal loyalty with ceremonial duty. Within this network, Anne has always been recognized for her disciplined and methodical approach, but her operational authority had traditionally been more subtle, exercised behind the scenes rather than as a public-facing figure. The announcement shifted that balance almost overnight. Critics, however, remained vocal. Some commentators questioned whether Anne's temporary operational authority could create tension with the heir apparent, potentially complicating succession planning or generating perceptions of internal rivalry. Others speculated about the long-term implications for the monarchy's institutional structure, suggesting that visible adaptability may challenge traditional hierarchies and redefine expectations of authority. These discussions underscored the complexity of managing both internal dynamics and external perception simultaneously. Amid this media and public scrutiny, the personal dimension remained significant. Family members navigated profound emotional challenges, balancing concern for King Charles's well-being with the responsibilities of operational leadership. Reports indicated that private conversations, mediated by and in senior advisors, focused on emotional support, strategic decision-making, and crisis management. This dual focus on personal care and institutional stewardship reflected the unique nature of the monarchy, where private relationships and public responsibilities are deeply intertwined. The global implications extended to symbolic, political, and cultural dimensions. The monarchy's capacity to manage crisis, maintain legitimacy, and preserve public confidence has long influenced perceptions of British stability and continuity. By successfully navigating this period, the royal family demonstrated resilience in the face of adversity, reinforcing both domestic trust and international respect. The careful orchestration of appearances, communications, and operational leadership underscored the enduring relevance of tradition, competence, and adaptability within a modern institutional context. As the media frenzy subsided into sustained coverage, analysts observed that public perception had largely stabilized around a central narrative. Princess Anne's leadership represented competence, reliability, and poise. Her ability to manage operational responsibilities without overshadowing the heir apparent reflected strategic acumen, ethical judgment, and emotional intelligence. These qualities not only preserved the monarchy's institutional integrity, but also reinforced its symbolic authority in a period of uncertainty. In addition, the crisis prompted reflection on broader themes of governance, leadership, and accountability. Observers highlighted lessons in crisis management, delegation, communication strategy, and emotional resilience. Anne's example illustrated the importance of measured authority, strategic planning, and empathetic engagement in maintaining both operational effectiveness and public confidence. These insights resonated beyond the monarchy, offering a framework applicable to organizations, institutions, and leadership structures worldwide. The confluence of personal, institutional, and public factors ultimately defined the period following the king's disclosure. The interplay of secrecy, strategic communication, operational delegation, media engagement, and public perception demonstrated the multifaceted challenges of managing a globally scrutinized institution. By navigating these complexities, Princess Anne and the palace's advisory apparatus reinforced the monarchy's adaptability, resilience, and enduring relevance. As the royal family continues to adjust to the realities of King Charles's illness, the world watches closely. Public attention, media analysis, and scholarly commentary converge to examine the monarchy's response, revealing enduring questions about transparency, authority, and legitimacy. The lessons of this period, about leadership under pressure, institutional continuity, and the management of public perception. Princess Anne's emergence as a key operational figure within the monarchy marked a pivotal turning point in how royal authority could be exercised in times of crisis. Traditionally, the line of succession and formal hierarchies determined roles and responsibilities, often prioritizing primogeniture and ceremonial precedence over practical management skills. However, the unprecedented disclosure of King Charles's advanced illness opened a window for Princess Anne to step into a role that combined leadership, operational oversight, and public representation. This section delves into the strategies she employed to navigate internal family politics, manage public perception, and consolidate her position as a reliable stabilizing force. From the onset, Anne's approach was defined by meticulous planning and strategic foresight. Unlike her younger brother, Prince Andrew, whose public controversies have often overshadowed his formal duties, and maintained a disciplined schedule, carefully balancing visible engagements with behind-the-scenes coordination. Advisors noted that her planning extended to contingency frameworks, ensuring that essential functions, ranging from ceremonial obligations to financial oversight, continued without interruption. By demonstrating competence and foresight, and established a narrative of reliability, signaling to both the royal household and the public that the institution's stability would not falter during the king's health crisis. Navigating internal family dynamics required a delicate combination of diplomacy and assertiveness. Within the royal family, roles are deeply intertwined with tradition, personal relationships, and public expectation. Princess Anne's increased prominence, while necessary for operational continuity, had to be carefully managed to prevent tension with other senior figures, particularly Prince William and Prince Charles's advisors. Anne's approach involved direct communication, inclusive decision-making, and measured transparency, ensuring that key stakeholders were aligned while avoiding the perception of overreach. Sources close to the family emphasized that her ability to balance authority with tact was a critical factor in maintaining harmony during a period of uncertainty. Public perception was another critical arena in which Anne needed to assert her leadership. The monarchy operates in a highly scrutinized media environment, where appearances, language, and demeanor can shape long-term narratives. Anne's public engagements during this period were characterized by a calm, composed, and consistent presence. Speeches were crafted to convey empathy for her father's condition, reassurance about institutional continuity, and confidence in the monarchy's enduring relevance. By projecting stability and competence, she countered speculative narratives and positioned herself as a figure capable of guiding the institution through turbulent times. And strategic use of media also reflected a nuanced understanding of contemporary public engagement. While the monarchy traditionally favors controlled, formal communications, she embraced a measured openness that balanced transparency with discretion. Press conferences, public appearances, and carefully curated interviews were designed to provide sufficient information to satisfy public curiosity without compromising privacy or fueling sensationalist reporting. Analysts noted that this approach represented a modern adaptation of royal communication strategy, leveraging visibility to build trust while maintaining the dignity of the institution. The consolidation of authority also involved practical operational management and assumed oversight of daily administrative functions, liaised with senior staff across multiple royal residences, and coordinated logistical arrangements for official engagements. Her responsibilities extended to financial planning, ensuring that resources were allocated efficiently amid increased operational demands. Advisors highlighted that her attention to detail, decisiveness, and capacity to manage complex workflows reinforced her reputation as a competent leader capable of ensuring continuity across the monarchy's multifaceted operations. Family loyalty and strategic alignment were integral to Anne's rise. Despite historical perceptions of her as the quiet member of the royal family, she demonstrated an ability to engage assertively when circumstances required. Her interactions with her siblings and extended family members were characterized by a balance of firmness and diplomacy, emphasizing shared responsibility for the monarchy's stability. Reports indicated that she cultivated alliances within the household staff, advisory teams, and broader institutional networks, ensuring that her operational authority was reinforced by support from key figures across the monarchy's internal ecosystem. Anne's leadership was also shaped by a deep understanding of the symbolic dimension of monarchy. Beyond operational tasks, she recognized the importance of embodying values that resonate with the public: duty, resilience, and service. Her public appearances were carefully choreographed to reinforce these attributes, whether through ceremonial engagements, charitable events, or formal statements. This dual focus on functionality and symbolism enhanced her legitimacy as a leader, demonstrating that operational authority could coexist with the representational responsibilities central to the monarchy's public image. A critical aspect of Anne's strategy involved managing perception relative to other senior family members. The public has historically compared the conduct of royals, scrutinizing consistency, authenticity, and alignment with institutional values. Anne's composed demeanor and disciplined approach contrasted with the more emotionally charged public narratives surrounding Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. By emphasizing steady leadership, clear communication, and a commitment to duty, Anne positioned herself as a stabilizing force, mitigating potential critiques and reinforcing confidence in the monarchy's continuity. Operational leadership also required engagement with external stakeholders, including government officials, international partners, and media organizations, and maintained a proactive approach, ensuring that critical engagements proceeded seamlessly despite the king's illness. Diplomatic protocols, ceremonial events, and official communications were coordinated under her oversight, demonstrating an ability to manage complex responsibilities with efficiency and professionalism. This approach not only ensured continuity, but also signaled to external observers that the monarchy remained capable of fulfilling its domestic and international obligations without disruption. And strategy extended to risk management and crisis mitigation. Advisors reported that she implemented protocols to anticipate potential challenges, including media speculation, operational bottlenecks, and internal disagreements. Scenario planning, contingency frameworks, and structured communication channels were established to address emerging issues proactively. This level of preparation reinforced the perception of competence, reducing uncertainty and ensuring that the monarchy could respond swiftly and decisively to evolving circumstances. Public engagement strategies were complemented by deliberate narrative framing. Anne's communications emphasized empathy, stability, and continuity, providing reassurance to citizens concerned about the king's health and the monarchy's future. By framing her leadership in terms of service, responsibility, and dedication, she cultivated public trust and reinforced the symbolic authority of the monarchy. Commentators noted that this approach helped to counter potential negative narratives, reinforcing the image of a competent and composed royal family navigating an unprecedented situation. Cultural and historical context played a role in shaping Anne's rise. The monarchy has long been viewed as a symbol of continuity, national identity, and institutional memory. By assuming a visible leadership role, Anne tapped into these traditions, signaling that the monarchy could adapt effectively to challenges without compromising its symbolic resonance. Her ability to integrate practical management with representational duties reflected an understanding of the monarchy's dual function as both an institution and a cultural icon. Anne's consolidation of authority also highlighted the interplay between personal attributes and institutional expectations. Her experience, work ethic, and knowledge of palace protocols enabled her to navigate complex dynamics with skill. Advisors observed that her capacity to remain composed under pressure, communicate effectively, and make informed decisions reinforced both internal and external confidence in her leadership. In doing so, she demonstrated that effective governance within the monarchy depends not only on formal hierarchies, but also on competence, judgment, and adaptability. Strategically, Anne's rise illuminated broader questions about modern monarchy and succession. While primogeniture and traditional protocols define formal succession, her operational leadership suggested that functional authority can be exercised independently of titular rank. By taking decisive action during the king's illness, Anne underscored the importance of skills, temperament, and practical capability in ensuring institutional resilience. Observers noted that this approach could influence future expectations of senior royals, emphasizing performance and accountability alongside ceremonial status. Public reactions to Anne's leadership were largely positive. Media outlets highlighted her composure, dedication, and strategic acumen, portraying her as a figure capable of balancing operational demands with public expectations. Social media commentary reinforced these narratives, with users praising her professionalism, empathy, and visible commitment to the monarchy. Analysts suggested that this period could redefine public perceptions of Anne, elevating her profile and establishing her as a central figure in the monarchy's contemporary operational framework. Amid these developments, Anne remained mindful of long-term institutional considerations. Her decisions were informed not only by immediate operational needs, but also by the implications for succession planning, public perception, and the monarchy's symbolic authority. By balancing immediate responsiveness with strategic foresight, she demonstrated an approach that integrated operational management, crisis leadership, and institutional stewardship. In conclusion, Princess Anne's rise during King Charles's illness exemplifies a modern model of royal leadership. By combining operational competence, strategic communication, and symbolic authority, she navigated internal family dynamics, public perception, and media scrutiny with skill and discipline. Her actions reinforced the monarchy's stability, showcased the importance of preparedness and adaptability, and positioned her as a central figure capable of guiding the institution through uncertainty. Anne's leadership during this period serves as a case study in balancing tradition, responsibility, and public expectation, highlighting how effective authority is defined not solely by title, but by skill, judgment, and strategic vision. Her ability to consolidate authority while preserving institutional harmony demonstrated the nuanced interplay between personal capability and structural expectation, offering insights into the evolving role of senior royals in contemporary governance. As the monarchy continues to adapt to the realities of King Charles's illness, Princess Anne's example provides a blueprint for leadership under pressure, showing how discipline, foresight, and poise can reinforce both operational continuity and public confidence. The announcement of King Charles's advanced illness sent shockwaves far beyond the United Kingdom, immediately becoming a topic of intense discussion across the global political landscape. Monarchies, republics, and international organizations all responded with a mixture of concern, curiosity, and calculated observation. For world leaders, this was not merely a matter of health disclosure, but a signal that the dynamics of British monarchy, and by extension, the United Kingdom's political influence, were entering an uncertain phase. At the heart of this emerging landscape was Princess Anne, whose poised assumption of responsibilities as a stabilizing figure became a focal point for international scrutiny. From the moment the broadcast aired, diplomatic channels around the world lit up with messages of solidarity, inquiries about the king's health, and strategic consultations about continuity of protocol. European capitals, long accustomed to following British royal affairs closely, reacted with a combination of respect and pragmatic caution. Leaders in France, Germany, and Spain were quick to issue statements acknowledging King Charles's courage in addressing the public, while subtly signaling support for Princess Anne's leadership in ensuring stability during a delicate transitional period. Analysts noted that the careful wording of these statements reflected both sensitivity to the monarchy's internal situation and recognition of and as a competent and reliable figure in the absence of full clarity regarding the king's health trajectory. Across the Atlantic, the United States responded with a complex mixture of historical interest, political commentary, and media fascination. While American presidents and secretaries of state officially conveyed condolences and well wishes for the king's recovery, media outlets seized upon the narrative of Princess Anne's unexpected rise. Public opinion pieces analyzed her leadership style, contrasting her steady and disciplined demeanor with the often volatile dynamics associated with other members of the royal family. Talk shows, political commentators, and international correspondents framed and as a rare figure capable of bridging ceremonial responsibility with effective governance, an assessment that, while flattering, also underscored the unusual circumstances that had propelled her into this role. Commonwealth nations, with their deep constitutional ties to the British monarchy, faced their own set of political and symbolic challenges. Prime ministers from Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and smaller Caribbean nations issued statements recognizing King Charles's dedication and expressing confidence in the continuity of governance under Princess Anne's stewardship. Behind the scenes, constitutional advisors in these nations were engaged in intensive scenario planning, preparing for contingencies ranging from temporary regency arrangements to potential long-term delegation of ceremonial duties. Diplomatic dispatches highlighted Anne's visible presence and organizational acumen as reassuring factors that helped stabilize what could have been a period of uncertainty across the Commonwealth. Within the corridors of power in the United Kingdom, the announcement initiated a flurry of political and media activity. Parliamentarians from across the political spectrum expressed concern for the king's health, while simultaneously scrutinizing the palace's decision to withhold information for so long. The cover-up, as it was framed in numerous news outlets, became a topic of debate about transparency, public trust, and the evolving role of the monarchy in modern governance. Princess Anne's strategic communications and public appearances were repeatedly cited as crucial in maintaining a perception of stability, even as questions about institutional secrecy and delayed disclosure dominated headlines.